We cannot compare our day one to someone's 15 years. I'm showing up here on this podcast as someone who has 15 years, like going on 16 years of entrepreneurship experience. For anyone starting out, like it's not an even playing field if that's what you're comparing yourself to. And so one is we have to drop the comparison because the only thing that you can compare yourself to is yourself. Alignment really comes from it's unique to each person. And so I think the more that we dive into this inner world work and really get to know ourselves more deeply, we start to unravel what does alignment look and feel like for ourselves. I like to talk about feelings and embodiment a lot because one is feelings create our frequency, but there's a lot going on because we all have a baseline frequency that we're starting out with.
Welcome to the Manifesting Millions podcast, where we talk about manifestation, money, and practical guidance to creating your dream reality. My name is Amy Van Meel, and I am an experienced coach and transformation guide, obsessed with helping you get out of your own way and create a life that blows your mind each day you wake up. My goal in this podcast is to share practical manifestation, self-awareness, and growth techniques in real talk conversations. So if you're ready to massively transform your reality, your finances, your relationships, and your overall enjoyment of life, you are in the right place. I am absolutely delighted that you're here with me today, babe. Let's get into it. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to the Manifesting Millions podcast. I am stoked for today's episode. I have a special guest on the podcast for you today, Anna Lozano. I love our conversation for a bunch of reasons, but one of the big ones is that Anna talks candidly about aligning your energetics in your business. We talk about taking big swings. We talk about identifying our baselines, why our baselines are really important to understand where we're at and then be able to shift those and not to go from, feeling low to feeling high, but that our goal is actually neutrality. This is a very juicy episode. I'm going to introduce Anna to you in just a moment, but stay tuned. And if you are curious to learn more about Anna, I have all of her links in the show notes for you below. With that, let's get into today's episode. So Anna Lozano is a mom, founder, investor, mentor, and energetics in business expert. The former co-founder of Love Powered Co., Anna now guides visionaries to build prosperous, purpose-driven, and high-impact brands through private mentorship and retreats. She is also a new podcast host of the Prosperity Playground podcast that launched this year only a few weeks ago on June 17th. Welcome, Anna. I'm so excited to have you on the Manifesting Millions podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. So excited to be here.
Ooh, it's going to be a juicy conversation. So let's dive in. What I wanted to sit down and chat with you today is talking about aligning our energetics with our business. And I love this topic. I love that you brought it to me and said, what do you think about this? Let's start super easy. Why does building a business in energetic alignment result in less burnout and more long-term success? Because that's really what everybody wants, right?
Yeah, I really feel it is what everyone wants. And it depends how long you've been an entrepreneur, but I started my journey in 2010, so over 15 years ago. And I feel so many of us, like so many of women in this generation who've been an entrepreneur for over a decade, we were really taught that the way to build success is through the hustle and through the working and proving ourselves because, there's really one seat at the table. And many of us who've come from the corporate world, there really was only one seat at the table for women. And this is where the evidence really was created. And so we became entrepreneurs and we had to overwork and prove ourselves and get the accolades in order to quote unquote achieve success. But then over the last X amount of years, I've been seeing the shift, not only internally for myself, but with my colleagues and other successful entrepreneurs, really questioning what is this all for? It doesn't feel good. Maybe now we're mothers and raising children, and we're still having to overwork and prove, and maybe we're experiencing symptoms, and maybe we're getting more sick, or maybe we're exhausted and or just simply unable to perform the way that we did, and our businesses are reflecting that. And so that's really what happened to me is when I became a mom and my oldest is now 9 years old, I just looked at everything and I said, like, I can't do it. I can no longer do it the way that I've been doing it. It no longer feels good. And what I want is more of a balance. And I used to be the woman that said, balance is bullshit and you have to sacrifice in one area so that the other one gets to thrive. But then again, motherhood really moved me to reevaluate this. And so what does balance look and most importantly feel like? And so if I want to thrive in motherhood and I want to thrive in business, then what needs to be outsourced? What needs to be completely eliminated? What needs to be delegated to someone else? And what do I really want to lead as a business owner? And so I feel like this has been the overall conversation with women who've been entrepreneurs for a decade plus to redefine what success, what financial success, what impact looks and feels like.
Hey, babe, are you enjoying these conversations and wanting just a little bit more? Then you'll love my email newsletter, Insights. Inside each Insights email, I share the latest transmissions and some of my deepest thoughts, the kinds of ideas and breakthroughs that I just don't post anywhere else. These emails have practical and actionable shifts that you can make right away to transform your life one step at a time. No fluff, just real, honest insights that make a difference. Plus, as an Insights subscriber, you'll get early access to my newest offers and services before anyone else even hears about them. If you're ready to go deeper, to make a real change, and to be the first to know what's next, then sign up for Insights today. Click the link in the show notes or head to amyvanmeel.com/insights. Don't miss out, babe. Join my email community and start receiving your regular dose of inspiration directly from me. Head on over to amyvanmeel.com/insights. I love that answer so much. I wanted to just shout to the rooftops when you first said that this is what you were taught. That's what I was taught as well. And in my own journey, I've also been dismantling that of but this is bullshit and that's not working. And it's no fun. It's not an enjoyable way to do business. Give us an example, if you can, something tangible of what does it look like to be in energetic alignment in our business? So you've talked about balance. How does it feel? What are markers that we can watch for or even aim for to move into that alignment space?
Mm-hmm. And alignment really comes from it's unique to each person. And so I think the more that we dive into this inner world work and really get to know ourselves more deeply, we start to unravel what does alignment look and feel like for ourselves. And so I like to talk about feelings and embodiment a lot because one is feelings create our frequency, but there's a lot going on because we all have a baseline frequency that we're starting out with. And I've been really diving deep into this conversation because if our baseline, and this is something that actually came through for me in a hypnotherapy session, if my baseline really was approving energy. And so the proving energy was the shadow side of desire. And again, it comes down to what was my evidence of success growing up? Well, I had to prove myself in order to achieve X, Y, and Z. But that baseline frequency actually holds a lower vibration. So I love to talk about the emotional frequency scale by Dr. Hawkins, and he actually outlines our emotions and what frequency they hold. And so, if my baseline is desire, which the shadow side is proving, well, that's actually under the neutrality um, baseline on the scale. And so, it's actually not a high frequency. And the goal is not high vibe. The goal is to move up the scale to get to neutral. And above neutral becomes, positivity and gratitude and joy and peace, what we actually desire to feel in order to magnetize the things that we desire. But if our baseline is not there, then that's where the work begins, because the baseline is actually what people are feeling. And so it's a big conversation, because we have this work, we have the frequency work, then we have the nervous system work. So as humans, we're programmed to be in survival because we used to run away from tigers and lions who might eat us, but this is no longer the case. However, that is our programming.
Mhm.
And so if we're striving for success and results and whatever that is definition for you, but you reach a certain threshold and that begins to feel unfamiliar, well, then you're going to sabotage it to get back to your baseline. So we have our frequency baseline, we have our nervous system baseline, and then, of course, we have our mindset. And I feel like the mindset really is the top of the iceberg. It is quite superficial. And so, yes, we can shift our mindset and start thinking positive, but if the frequency is actually lower on the scale of what we're vibrating at, and the nervous system is not calibrated for success, but it's calibrated still for survival, well, we're in this space of like resistance. So we know we want alignment, but really behind the scenes there's no ease and flow.
Yeah.
Right? It feels like pressure. It feels like resistance. It's not working. We're not getting the results that we want. So it's the inner world game is a lot of work. And yet, when we can crack our own codes, because it's different for every single one of us, depending on where our baseline is, how we were raised, the environment, who we surround ourselves with, well, everything is going to actually feel quite out of alignment. So then where do you begin? Well, we need to bring awareness to all of this. So
Yeah.
one is, how do you feel? Right? Like on the regular, behind closed doors, where you're not on stage, you're not performing, you're not on social media, how do you feel?
Right.
That will be your first indicator of your baseline frequency. So many people sit in the frequency of guilt, in the frequency of shame, in the frequency of proving, in the frequency of trying hard and hustling, in anger and frustration. Well, if that's your baseline, well, that's what you're going to continue attracting. That's one. How do you feel behind closed doors? Neutrality is the goal. Like this whole like high vibe, fake it till you make it bullshit. It's superficial. It's
I
bullshit.
I love that you call that out. I've said that on previous episodes as well, that the goal is not to always be in this like super positive, high frequency. Nobody can see me air quoting, but I'm air quoting high frequency space, because that's also not the fullness of the human experience either. But to
Mhm.
move to neutrality opens up possibility.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
love that you're talking about that.
And then you get to layer on. So it is like, how do I want to feel? Well, maybe you're out for a nature walk and you witness all the abundance and prosperity around you. And you're like, wow, I have so much gratitude right now in this moment. Well, that gratitude is appreciation, is an elevated frequency, an elevated emotion. Well, maybe that day you start to see things around you in the field start to shift and you're calling that in. And yes, of course, the goal is to have more and more of those experiences. But in order to live there and that be your baseline, then absolutely you need to feel everything that as a human we're here to feel, because those emotions are going to come and go. And one of those other ones is like, yeah, the happy, right? Like the happy is really a fleeting emotion. It comes and goes. And so if we desire that elevation, well, okay, joy. Joy is an elevated emotion that's actually quite high on that emotional frequency scale. Okay, so what do I need to, who do I essentially need to be in order to experience that joy? Well, what brings you joy? Do more of that, and then you can experience more of that. But then don't get spiral down when you experience rage or anger or frustration or guilt or shame. That's just coming to be expressed. It's coming up for you to feel it and move through it. And reminder here that it's not who you are. It's an emotion that wants to come through you. Just like you said, it's where we have all these emotions within us. And so rather than getting stuck in those, allowing them to move through us so that we can come back to neutrality or above. Like it is actual work. Like this is work. It's not something that just happens. Like this is actually the most important work that we will ever do because it is so life transformative. And then, of course, the nervous system work is on the other side of that.
So let's talk about that just briefly, because one of the things that I think is often so we're told it a lot. We see it in all the social posts, and I've seen it in interviews and podcasts and like YouTube clips that is really focusing on, like shift your energy, shift your emotion, move into reaching for joy, be that person. And there are one of the things that I endeavor to do all the time on this podcast is speak honestly about the human experience, because there are times in my life, and I know everybody has this as well, times in my life where it feels like everything's working. Like
Yeah.
things feel good. It feels pretty easy to find things to be grateful for or joy or even just like chill, zened out with my coffee happiness. And then there are times in life where it's just like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to get from like getting out of bed all the way through the day without wanting to just hide in a corner or dig a hole and stay there forever.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's just a day, but sometimes that extends for quite a period. I've had like big swaths of time in life. And I think a lot of people find those moments very difficult because they're trying to move into that neutrality that you've spoken of and find those moments of joy. Talk to us a little bit, if you can, Anna, about like how can we leverage this space, not necessarily from a place of let this just end and let me get out of here, but maybe as an opportunity. There's something that I saw in one of your posts earlier that I loved, and I think this is going to lead in nicely. It says, you can't think your way into alignment. You have to feel safe enough to live there. You have
Mhm.
to anchor into joy and gratitude and peace first. It's not a strategy issue, it's
Mm.
a frequency opportunity.
Yeah.
Talk to us about those
Yeah.
moments.
Well, it's interesting. And I'm not a clinician. I'm not speaking to anyone who's dealing with depression or dealing with, something like that
Mhm.
where you need professional help. But what I know about the human experience is that, yes, we're all going to feel those downs, and we are having this experience, and it's coming through us for whatever reason. And so I think there's also this choice that we get to choose how long we stay in something. And I was speaking to one of my clients who is a grief coach, and grief is an extremely heavy emotion. It carries an extremely low frequency, an extremely low vibration. And she allowed herself to be in this grief for 2 years. And she gave herself, well, she didn't know it at the time, but as we've been working together, she realized that she gave herself a timeline. And it was a 2 year timeline to be in this grief, and not only with her for herself and within herself, but supporting her three children through this grief of losing her husband to suicide and them losing their dad to suicide. And after the 2 years, she decided, that she's going to use her story for impact, and she's
Mm.
going to support others moving through the grief. And so that is an ultimate, like that's an extreme scenario and situation that she moved through. And so if we're feeling frustration because our launch didn't go the way that we wanted to, or we have an e-commerce store and we had goal, of selling 1,000 units during Cyber Month, but we sold only 500, like, and we allow ourselves to feel whatever emotion that brings up, frustration, judgment, uncertainty, if this is what we're meant to be doing. Like what I like to say, and I like to show like a simple example and like a deep example of someone moving through grief is like, give yourself a timeline. I don't believe that we need to sit in the shit for a long period of time. Like, we're humans and we have free will and we have choice. And so if you're in a downward spiral, acknowledge it, bring awareness to it, feel it, and you also get to decide to move through it.
Mm.
And so I think this is where we can also kind of move into victim mentality. And we're going through this and we tell everybody about it, and we tell the internet about it, and we tell our neighbors about it, and we sit in it versus moving through it. And again, this is not bypassing. It's like, feel the sadness, feel the anger, feel the shame, feel the guilt, feel the resentment, feel it, and then decide to move through it. If someone who lost her husband to suicide can move through it in 2 years, and that doesn't mean that she no longer feels the grief. She does on the daily, but she now attached her story to a mission and a purpose bigger than herself. And that is her why that gets her out of bed every single day. And so if she can do it, I wholeheartedly believe that everyone listening to this podcast can do it too.
I love that. Something that I've been playing with lately that has been really helpful is I think what we have this so many of us, and it's part of what we've been taught. We have this perception that when we are in our ideal state, the person who we want to be is like always happy, always calm, always feels good, things always flow her way. But the truth is, and this is where I've been playing with, there are times, even when life is great, that you're going to feel down. And I've been in the space of going, you know what? I can feel sad and still be in alignment with the version of my life that I'm creating. I can
Mm,
feel frustrated and angry and still be on the pathway and making all the right moves. I can feel like I want to hide in a hole today and still be perfectly aligned with where I'm going because, and this is literally the chatter that I tell myself, because when I get there, and that is the reality, and it all shows, and everybody can point and go, Amy, look at what you've created. I know we're still going to have those down moments. I
yes.
want to cycle back very quickly to your conversation on the baseline because what I want to just help make clear for our listeners is how can we determine, perhaps that's the best word, what our baseline is because life is so different, right? Like, I mean, we all have them. You'll have days where you talk to a friend and you're like, everything is amazing. This is awesome. And then you're like, what am I doing? I'm totally out of like, how do you
Yeah.
understand what your baseline is so that you can begin to flex awareness to shift that?
Mm. And as you're saying this, and I don't have like a methodology for it, but I was thinking, like, what if you just started tracking, like just right, waking up every single day? Like, how do I feel waking up? And, I have examples of people in my life where when they wake up, there's always something to complain about, right? It's kind of like
Mm,
that half glass half full or glass half empty conversation. And that really is an indicator of what is your baseline, right? And so maybe keep a journal and track, like, how do I feel when I wake up, first thing in the morning, right? If you had a great night and you don't have children coming into your bed and waking you up, like, you should feel at least neutral, like life is good, unless you're dealing with an illness or, a really tragic situation that you're going through. Like, really, if we look at life glass half full, Well, the sun is shining. I look out my window, I see Lake Okanagan. Like I can easily anchor into gratitude. Or, when I think about my day ahead, like I'm excited, there's possibility, there's potential. Today I released a podcast, I'm recording with you. Like I'm going to go for a walk after this. And yet maybe my daughter will stub her toe and have a screaming fest. Okay, well, then again, I get to choose how I show up, right? I get to choose how I react or if I respond. And it's like everything becomes a choice.
Mm.
And so it's like life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. And you get to decide how you feel day in, day out. And again, this is like just bringing awareness to what is happening within us, because that's the most important indicator. And so, first, we work on our inner world, and then the outer world becomes a mirror of what's happening on the inside. And so if your external world is not what you desire it to be, well, that's an indicator there's work to do on the inside. Now, going back to the nervous system work and what I didn't mention before, like subconscious programming work,
Mm.
is if you're reaching the desires, right? If your business is thriving, motherhood is thriving, your relationships are thriving, you live in your dream home, and then shit starts to happen, well, that could be an indicator that maybe your nervous system yet hasn't felt safety in all of that prosperity, abundance, and success. So that was something that I experienced. So in my early 30s, late 20s, making so much money, traveling the world, speaking on stages. My husband, boyfriend at the time, we purchased a second home in Mexico. And then I unconsciously began to sabotage it. So, what I realized, and so this is like when I mean sabotage, all of a sudden business became harder. All of a sudden, the penthouse actually in Mexico started having all these leaks. And it became like a cash flow thing where we were just wasting so much money fixing things. And then I realized through hypnotherapy that the story running behind the scenes is like, how can I be more successful than my dad? And that was the self sabotage that started to kick in.
Mm.
And so when we're again like living our experience, but things start to feel harder or, they're not as aligned anymore, I always like to go back to my inner world and say, okay, what's happening here?
Mhm.
Because I am in the driver's seat of my reality. And now I recognize that there have been really pivotal moments in my life and in my journey where I would unconsciously start to sabotage. And then that would bring me back to the baseline of financial success and accolades and all the things that felt comfortable, that felt safe
Right.
for my nervous system. And so, subconscious reprogramming and nervous system work, which no one was talking about at the time, I wasn't labeling it that way either, really became the work to say, okay, so now how do I begin to feel safe in this next level, in this next layer of success? Because it's something that I really, really want. I have the vision boards. I have the numbers in my head. I've done the mindset work. I speak positively to myself. And yet, this is a pattern. And if it's a pattern, it didn't just happen once, then there's much more deeper work that needs to happen. And so, and that was an older one. What I've realized recently, actually, through another hypnotherapy session, was the proving. So I realized that a big programming of mine was that I've always felt like I've had to prove myself. And that proving showed up in the hard work, in
Mm.
the overworking, in the hustle and the grind. And it shows up in sneaky ways. And so I was like, okay, this makes so much sense. I was a child, we grew up immigrant, Polish immigrant. My parents didn't have a lot of money, and I had to shop at thrift stores in like I just remember so clearly grade 6. And that is something that I knew that I shop at thrift stores. My friends didn't know that. They didn't see me as someone who shops at thrift stores. I know it's cool now, but it wasn't cool at the time.
Right.
And so then I had to prove myself, and this is all unconscious programming running behind the scenes to fit in.
Hmm.
And then I had to overwork in order to fit in and be like them. And so, again, this could be bullshit, but it is the story that was programmed within me. And so that I get the hustle, I get the hard work. It's something that I used to pride myself on, but yet it was connected to that proving energy, which is actually a low vibration. And it is actually what is felt by the external environment, by the external world. So that's a big one that I've recently uncovered. And so anytime where I see resistance, maybe lack of alignment, which is resulting in the lack of ease and flow. If there's relationship stuff coming up, if there's resentment, if there's these we get these nudges, then I always look at, okay, what needs to be worked on now? And it's not that I'm looking for it. It's just my external world is a mirror of what else needs to be worked on a much deeper level.
I love that. I want to take that and run with it just a little bit. So, I want to talk a little bit about big swings, specifically for this one's going to be addressed to the women. I mean, most of my audience is women, I think, anyway, but I find that, gosh, we are so socialized differently about how we show up in the world, how we take swings. Men are really celebrated for it. Women are kind of like, who the hell do you think you are? So, what I'm going to use a very recent experience because I like to keep it just like very clear and honest and tangible. When I was preparing for this episode, I was sitting down last week, I was getting my notes together, framing the conversation. How do I want to like chat with Anna, what I want to bring forward? And I was going through your Instagram profile, like, okay, what's in here that really stands out that would be so great for our conversation? And I saw you next to like these amazing names like Kate Northrup, who I just was tuning into a few weeks ago, and on stage with the Pink Skirt Project and having interviews with Lori Harder and Lindsay Schwartz. And these are people in my mind that are these big names. And the chatter in my brain went full bore of like, who do you think you are
Mm.
to sit down with someone like Anna that is in this like elevated space and feel like you can come in as their equal. And I
Mm.
want to talk about that because I think that that space of proving it is so easy for me to that's not true. It is easy for us as humans. It's not easy for me
Yeah.
to bluster and say, "Well, of course I can be, I'm just as good as this person. I have just as much to value." But I think as women in particular, we really struggle with that.
Mhm.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts of you've had such powerful, like visual success. People can see the success that you've created, the relationships that you have, these amazing connections that you've built. Help us understand for entrepreneurs who are maybe just getting started or women who are they're not 25, right? They're 40, 50, 60 and they're going, "Oh my goodness, how am I going to do this?" How could you encourage them to not be improving energy, but to stand in that alignment that's going to help them build those connections that will help build that business of beautiful alignment?
Yeah, such a good question. So I think for me, with the proving energy, that equaled working hard, right? Like that's what it resulted in. And that's what I've been unpacking, unraveling. I think you also hit the nail on the head by saying, women that are just starting out. So two key things here. One is we cannot compare, our day one to someone's 15 years. So I'm showing up here on this podcast as someone who has 15 years, like going on 16 years of entrepreneurship experience. Like I have been my own boss in three different industries for almost 16 years. And that brings a lot of experience. It brings a lot of success and it brings so much failure. It brings a lot of trial and error. And for anyone starting out, like it's not an even playing field if that's what you're comparing yourself to. And so one is we have to drop the comparison because the only thing that you can compare yourself to is yourself.
Mm.
For me, the second thing, which I think is so important for anyone listening, is when we have pedestals, that creates a hierarchy, and that hierarchy is all ego. And then we'll never be good enough. And
Mm.
so this has been the work, a big part of the work. And I would say at least 5 years of just knocking down those pedestals. We're all humans. We're all having a human experience. And so for me, whether I'm speaking to Lori Harder, who also has 20 years of experience, or someone who's just getting started, I show up in the same energy and in the same gratitude and in the same frequency of I am here to serve. And there's no hierarchy for me. And I think that has been the most freeing thing that I have been able to do for myself is we're all humans. We all are having a human experience. Some people have more years in the game than others, and I could have easily went down that trap also being like, I just launched my podcast and who am I to invite all these people? Well, guess what? I have spent 15 years building relationships with these people. So, Lori Harder, who was episode 1, I've known Lori Harder since network marketing when I was building USANA and she was building Isogenics. Kate Northrup, I've known Kate Northrup since 2013. So, if you hear in the episode, she goes, "Hello, old friend. We met at a convention 12 years ago." Neil Donald Walsh, I was a student of his last year when I was going through my own dark night of the soul and finding what is my purpose here. Renee Warren is someone who I was actually one of my first two friends in the Okanagan. And so, like, these are relationships that I've not only built, but also nurtured and cultivated over the last decade plus.
Mm.
And so, to have that backstory and also like, don't allow that explanation to be like your resignation letter, right? Of like, oh, well, if it's going to take me 10 years, then I'm just not going to go for it. But I also really value and nurture relationships and connections. So I don't know if I mentioned it here or I was just recording solo podcast episodes before I was hopping on, but like really understanding my human design and really understanding my own astrology and my chart has allowed me to tap deeper into what you asked at the very beginning. So my human design is 4/6. So the line 4 really is about networking and connecting. And since I went to business school in like 2007, that's something that I naturally began cultivating, and it fuels me. It lights me up. It brings me energy. It is alignment for me.
Mm.
And so I really value that. I really value nurturing relationships and connections for the long term. And now you can see the evidence of that with the guests that I'm bringing on my podcast, for example. With astrology, I realized that I'm like a triple Cancer, and I always knew is highly intuitive, but the emotional piece of Cancer, I've actually stuffed down for years because that's how I was raised. It's like stuff down your feelings and put a smile on your face.
Right.
But the more that I can dive into that, the more it's me being in my authentic truth. And then the more I become magnetic to the things that I desire, right? And right now it's focused on the podcast and launching this as a brand. And so amazing question. I mean, thank you for bringing it up. One thing is knock down the pedestals. We're all humans having an experience, and some of us just have way more years in the game. And there's no judgment, there's no comparison. Like, our ego wants to do that. But the more we can just center back into our own truth and remember that we are worthy just because we are, then that starts to really release itself too. And we experience the freedom of not comparing and not judging and just standing in our own authentic power.
Love it. Love it. Okay, I could ask you 1,000 more questions, but being mindful of time. Um, yeah, let's wrap it up here because I think if I ask the next question, we're going to be here for another 20 minutes. So, Anna, how can people find you? Where can they find you? Tell us all the deets so that people can connect with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm on Instagram _Anna Lozano. The podcast is The Prosperity Playground. And yeah, I'm mostly there. My website's annalozano.com, but I love showing up on Instagram and really adding value. That's kind of my space.
Nice. And if you could give us a favorite, which I know is going to be challenging, but if you could give us a favorite way of how you work with clients, what's your favorite way of working with your clients? Like, is it
Mm.
101? Is it retreats? What's your jam?
I'm super, yeah, super zoned in on that. So I've tried it all. And this is the thing is like my line six in human design is like that trial and error. And so I've tried it all. I've also, like I mentioned in my one of my responses, like been in three different industries. And so I have a wide range of expertise, but my zone of genius, I love diving one to one. And I know that's not as scalable as other offers, but I really love working one to one with people because it allows me to go deep and really access those deeper layers. And then having my moving on 3 year experience living part time in Mexico and part time in Kelowna, BC. I desire to bring more women through retreats in Mexico so that they can really use that as a space to recharge and reconnect with their I don't want to say balanced again, but really reconnect with their masculine and feminine energies in this harmonious space. And the only way that we can truly do that is by giving ourselves spaciousness to feel.
Yeah, I love that. I have a longtime friend who about 3 years ago up and decided she was done with Calgary. She moved to Mexico. She's like, I'm only going to be here for 6 months, Amy. And I'm like, I don't think you're ever moving back here. And it's been 3 years. She comes back to visit, but I don't think she's moving back to Canada. She loves where she is. I want to
Oh.
just, you said a word that I was intrigued by, and I'm just going to very quickly grab on that. You said you really love the one-on-one work, but it's
Mm.
not as scalable. Do you feel that there's this pressure, especially being an entrepreneur and having the the depth of experience, but also success that you've had, this pressure to scale the work?
Mm. Like, yes, yes, and no. So, when I'm not anchored in my alignment and in my truth, like, yes, it's okay. What's growing, what's scaling, what's leverage, and so forth. And therefore I've tried it, right? So I've tried the courses, the groups, the larger and lower ticket, and it doesn't feel as impactful and valuable. So I always have to keep coming back to my core and my root. And I know that my biggest impact really comes through the one-to-one work. And then I look at, yeah, I'm a strategist. I do love, like, that's why my podcast is all about strategy and soul. It really is about the harmony of both. And I do want to grow and scale because on the other side of that is more impact, is more of what I'm here for and what I'm here to do. And so looking at, okay, well, then what would scaling look like?
Mm.
And right now, I feel like a startup entrepreneur with the Prosperity Playground brand because the podcast is just the first product of the bigger brand that I hold in my vision. And then, of course, I have the mentorship and client work that I do. And so, yeah, I'm in this space of curiosity. What does scaling look like? It's hard to scale yourself. And when you do the one-to-one work, it is about you. You are the one being hired. And so, there's different methods that other coaches work with. They have other coaches working under them. And of course, those coaches have been trained by the founder, but it's just not the direction that I want to go. So I'm in a space of curiosity, like what does scaling look and feel like for me? Right now, I'm happy with where we're at. And I do love the startup energy. And so it's like, okay, the Prosperity Playground, where is this going? What is that vision? And if I can anchor into the 5 year vision, and starting with the podcast, and I get to play and have fun with the in between steps that I'm not rushing through. And that's a big thing.
I love it. I love it. I might earmark to reach out to you in like 9 months or so and go, hey, how do you feel about sitting down and having a conversation about scaling? And the reason that I clicked on that is just I think there's so much of that being talked about in the business world right now. But you're right, scaling one-to-one is extremely difficult. Short of training somebody and hiring them out, I think that's a challenge. Anna, I'm so delighted with our conversation. I can't believe the time has already come to an end. I will put all of the links for people to connect with you in the show notes so they can find you. Any last words before we close out today's episode?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Just take one nugget, something, a sentence, a story, something that really resonated with you, and put that into action, because we're here not just to listen, but we're really here to start integrating, implementing so that we can move closer and closer towards those goals, dreams, and desires that we hold.
Love it. Love it. Thanks so much, Anna.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, how was that? How great was this conversation with Anna and some of the insights that she shared? I'm super curious to hear from you what really stood out, and what is the thing, as Anna encouraged us at the end, what is the thing that you are going to take with you and put into action? And I want to just close out on that for you today, that I know so often, if you're like me at all, and I suspect there's a few of you who are a little bit like me in this way, we hear so often from people that we need to take action on things. And sometimes that can feel exhausting because it feels like everything is about doing something. What I want to encourage you to hang on to as you think about the conversation and identify what you're actually going to put into motion in your life is that it doesn't have to be big. Our conversation early on talked about identifying our baseline, and that putting that into action is literally just practicing awareness, which we've talked about so often here on the podcast, and flexing some open and conscious thinking to pay attention to, what is the stuff that's going on? What is the chatter? How am I feeling? What is the thing that I keep defaulting to? As Anna talked about, how do you wake up in the morning? I mean, I know there are people in my life that like wake up complaining and or open conversations. I've had so many phone calls where I'll be like, "How are you?" And they go, "Well, there's nothing I have to complain about." And I've started just batting that back going, "Well, I'm not interested in hearing your complaints anyway, so I guess that's good." Sort of a good-natured way of kind of pointing out the goal of our conversation is not to just sit here complaining about things. Anyway, so I just want to leave you with that note to think about how you can play with this, and it doesn't have to be this giant action, all these big swings, all these momentous movements. It can be small. It can be just a day-to-day thing that you are checking into. As we wrap today's episode, I want to once again open up the invite for you if you are considering working with me one-on-one. I will roll the invite for you here shortly. And I specifically leave it this way because, listen, I am working on becoming really good at sharing and promoting and talking about my work and my programs. But in the meantime, I have these beautifully recorded segments that I think do a much better job of sharing the work that I do. And really quick before I do that, I want to say thank you for all of you who have left a review on the podcast. I've had some funny little insights that came out of that, which I will probably share in a future episode. But just thank you so much if you've left a review. And if you have not yet, I would really love and appreciate for you to take a half a second, maybe it's 5 seconds, to just click the review option on your podcast platform. Rate us in the stars. Tell us how many stars. I don't know why I'm saying us. It's me, myself, and I behind the microphone here. Tell me and all my multiple personalities how you felt about the podcast, because, of course, that helps me reach more people just like you and get more insight and information into the hands of really amazing humans. With that, I invite you to consider working with me one-on-one, and I am looking forward to seeing you next week on the podcast. Tell me if this resonates. You're a driven, high-performing professional. You've achieved some measure of success, but there's this knowing, this sense, this quiet calling from within that says there's more waiting for you. It might be in your career, it might be in your relationships, in your health, your personal fulfillment, but you just know that there's something more that you want to crack open, and you're just not sure how to get there. Imagine what could happen if you were to work with a coach who really listens deeply to what you're sharing, who sees your unique brilliance and reflects it back to you and helps you create expansion in every area of your life. Why my clients choose to work with me is many, many things. Among them being that I bring over 2 decades of experience investing in coaching and therapy and personal development so that you get to benefit from proven tools and deep wisdom. You will feel truly heard and understood, and this is something that my clients say over and over is one of the most profound and impactful parts of working together with me, and is where their transformation really begins. I guide you to reframe your challenges, to unlock new possibilities, and to ultimately manifest the life that you are craving to live. My coaching isn't about giving answers. It is about asking the most powerful questions and sharing with you wisdom from living in the trenches so that you can discover your own truth, direction, and power. You can expect a very safe, confidential space with me. There's no judgment here, just support and insight and practical strategies tailored to you. Whether you want to advance in your career, find more joy in your day-to-day life, deepen your relationships, work on your health, our work together is personalized to your goals. This is not about quick fixes, my love. I am all about lasting change that feels authentic and empowering. Picture yourself 6 months after we work together, clear, confident, living a life that feels in alignment for you, that feels magical and powerful, and that you just wake up every day like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is my life. That's what we can accomplish together through the power of coaching rooted in empathy, experience, and the deep belief in your limitless potential. If you're ready to invest in yourself and create real, lasting expansion, it's time that we work together. This is your invitation to step into a bigger, more fulfilling life, no matter where you want to grow. To find out more, you can reach out to me by email, amy@daretobegin.net, or hit me up on the DMs on Instagram. If you're ready to say yes right now, then head on over to amyvanmeel.com/next level and secure your spot today. I'm so excited to work with you, my love. I can hardly wait to see what we create for you. Let's go. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you loved what you heard today, be sure to share it with me by leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform and help me reach more like-minded people who are ready to expand their life. If you haven't yet followed me on social media, find me on Instagram for extra love and inspiration by following @AmyVanMeel or visit my website at amyvanmeel.com. I love you so much, babe, and I am damn proud of you. I am already excited to connect in the next episode. And in the meantime, believe in yourself with the confidence of a 5-year-old.